Men and women both contend with mental health challenges, but it seems despite a growing awareness of the issue, there's still a difference between how the genders experience and cope with those issues. For instance, the fact that 4 out of 5 deaths by suicide are committed by men is a striking statistic that raises questions about whether men wait too long to get the help they need. Joining us now to explore that, Dr. Thomas Ungar. He's psychiatrist-in-chief at St. Michael's Hospital and an associate professor in psychiatry at the University of Toronto. And it's good to see you again, Tom. Nice to have you back. Okay, we need some understanding of this here. Apparently, women attempt suicide more than men do, but men die at a rate 4 times that of women. Help us understand this. Yeah, it's kind of surprising.
You know, about 1 in 10 people will get a depression in their lives, men and women, totally vulnerable to it. But when you look at the suicide rates, what you see is the completers are predominantly men. Often it's a feature of the fact that men often act out, they may be a little more violent in their attempts, or that they keep it to themselves, delay getting treatment, so when they finally do get around to it, they're often sadly successful in that attempt.
For men under the age of 35, apparently suicide is the leading cause of death. That is the case today. If we were having this conversation 30, 40 years ago, would that have been the case then?
Probably. You know, mental health has been there. It hasn't been a topic as commonly discussed as it is now, which is a good thing that we're talking about it. But we really haven't made a big difference in suicide rates in terms of public health. It's quite shocking.
And again, a British study suggesting that unlike women, men, when feeling down, will try to distract themselves. And I guess I want to ask whether watching the game is a better way of spending time pondering your, misery than something else.
Yeah, so, I mean, culturally, men often keep things to themselves. They don't talk about it as much. They like to take action. They like to solve problems. We like to play sports and, sublimate or diffuse that into other activities around us. So that's very common. So things like sports are really healthy ways of often just coping with frustration and stress and letting steam off.
Do men's mental health problems, are they more largely undiagnosed than women's?
So I don't think we know that exactly, but most likely, and that's my impression, because when the men come to see me, they're usually a little further down the road in terms of the severity and the acuity of the illness. They don't like to come for help. They don't like to admit any kind of weakness or vulnerability.
That's all macho crap, eh?
It is, but that's one take on it. But another take on it just might be that the way we're interacting with them and the way they have to come for help is not a male way of accessing help. Getting together in a circle, talking about your feelings is not usually what guys do, or talking one-on-one about your feelings with a therapist or a doctor. So we're just starting to ask the really interesting question, are the services or the ways we're reaching out really designed to get to men the way men experience culture, the way they interact with things? And so all the new social media and attempts by some of the men's foundations and charities that are doing great work are just starting to get into that to see if there's any innovative ways to access them rather than the traditional ways that we've been going at.
Sounds like by posing the question, you seem to think the answer is no. So do you have any different models that you think might be better suited to the male psyche?
I do. I think, we don't use human design very often in how we deliver services. We have this sort of technical way we approach things. So if you get human-centered design or, humanistic design thinking in there, what are guys doing? Where do you get to them? You used the analogy earlier in the locker room. So there's one of my colleagues is doing a locker room doctor episode where guys are talking to each other about stuff, but in the locker room, the way guys talk. I worked on a web series where we tried to use entertainment as a vehicle to get to them. So there might be some different ways, but it's really just the dawn of that era of trying to contextualize and make culturally accessible ways of accessing help, let alone for the subpopulations of men that are doing really poorly in terms of their health.
Is that a reference to Think You Can Shrink? Is that what you were talking about there? Okay, we actually have a clip of that. You want to go to this now, or should we hold off a while? Maybe let's titillate the audience a little bit. We'll just leave that out there, but we'll come back to a little bit later. We mentioned 3 things to you here: depression, anxiety, schizophrenia.
Yeah.
The male rates of these mental illnesses compared with women, where is it?
So it's a great question. We used to think women are 2 to 1 in terms of depression and anxiety rates. But lately, some research is suggesting that the men are just not acknowledging it because we don't have blood tests or a scanner to tell you, this person's depressed, this one's not, the way we have x-rays. They're really self-report surveys and instruments. So now some of the recent people looking at it are starting to think, well, maybe we had it wrong. Maybe they were there. They just won't talk about it. They won't acknowledge it. They won't come forward. Schizophrenia, often a male condition, sometimes more. So yeah, I don't put a lot of stake in those kind of rates because, I think because culture is such a thick layer in mental health, it's just such a problem with the stigma not acknowledging and not coming for help, that I just don't know that I can trust a lot of that when it's all self-report sort of instruments.
No, fair enough. All right, then in the case of symptoms, men present certain kinds of symptoms, women present certain kinds of symptoms. How different might those symptoms be?
Yeah, so guys are notorious for being irritable, angry, acting out, risk-taking, substance use to deal with feelings, that kind of stuff. They externalize some of that stuff. Women often might talk feelings, more likely have social connections where they talk about it, may access help more easily because they're used to that. They may not be as threatened by that. So we see a little bit more of that type of thing where they come in through the emergency room or get in trouble in some way, and then they access help, and there's an underlying disorder there.
I think in the last couple of decades, your profession in particular has become increasingly aware of postpartum depression in women. What is new, and what I've just discovered apparently, is that fathers can suffer from this as well. How does that happen?
Right. So it's not for the same reasons, right? Because they're not doing the deliveries. They're not having all the same hormonal changes.
Right.
That leads to that perhaps in females. But postnatal depression, really, you know, the lack of sleep, the stress, the responsibility, the entire change in identity when one has a child, that can be the type of precipitant, social precipitant, family precipitant, psychological precipitant that just is the icing on the cake that tips people into a depressive episode or an anxiety episode that might have not had it or been close. So that's probably what's going on. We just weren't even thinking to look at men years ago. We were so focused on wonderfully identifying some of the specific women's health issues that it's sort of a dawn of a new era to see this sort of silent epidemic amongst men's health.
Don't want to exaggerate it if it's not a widespread thing, but how prevalent would you say the male phenomenon of postpartum depression would be?
Geez, I don't know the numbers. It's, you know, depression's about 8 to 10% in people. So in the postnatal period, it's probably a little bit higher than that, maybe 10 to 15%.
Gotcha.
But I'm guessing at that.
Okay. I gather there is a study from Australia that suggests that, quote, there is a strong element of negativity in our culture about men which cannot contribute to positive mental health. Do you sign on to that view?
Wow. Yeah, there's a bit of that going on. I think that we've done such a good job with equality in society and gender equity and things like that. The question is, has it become a bit of reverse discrimination? Have we pushed it too far to have what Rob Whitley and McGill's called the demonization of men in terms of some of the accessibility of free services, shelters? We often have women's mental health clinics in the OBGYN department. We might have more women's shelters. They're not thinking about placing the men's stuff in there. So I don't want to overstate that, but they're probably the pendulum swung a little bit over the edge on occasion against men.
Well, if you do look at mass media, you know, the fact is, I guess, most of the reporting about crime focuses on the disproportionate number of men who are doing it, and all of the other ills in society seem to be disproportionately focused on men. Is it reasonable to assume that if men are watching this, they may think, oh my goodness, we're the bane of everybody's existence out there?
You know, it's funny, in the media, there's a lot of representations of men as like the adult child right now. You know, you see all these they're not teenager movies, and they're young adult movies of guys in the basement at 35 years old playing video games. So there aren't a lot of good role modeling male identity figures out there for a positive framing of manhood, the way there might have been back in the old John Wayne movies. I don't know that that's better, but we don't have a really positive identity for a lot of young guys to look at these days.
Thankfully, Dr. Ungar, you are one of them. And we're about to show a clip from your latest work. We gave a little hint earlier that we would talk about this. You've got an online reality TV series that's called Think You Can Shrink.
Right.
Basically about, well, you know what, I think, as they say in law classes, res ipsa loquitur. This thing speaks for itself. Sheldon, roll it, please.
Everyone's better off without me. Aren't they?
What makes you say that?
Because all I do is cause problems. All I do is anger people. All I do is get people annoyed with me. Because I can't do my job properly. I can't love my wife properly. I can't treat my kids properly. How can I see 6 hours from now? How can I see a week from now? Everything would be easier if I just wasn't here.
We should say, I mean, that guy's an actor. He did a really good job of sort of presenting, I guess, what would be a typical case of somebody feeling depression and completely at loose ends. Tell us why you thought this format could be constructive for putting the issue of men's mental health on the agenda. Yeah,
so, you know, I've been doing health education, health promotion for 25 years. and it's not working that well. You know, I talk to family doctors or public audiences. These are the symptoms. Go get help. Do this to try to get better. And it's not changing that much. I mean, it's a great thing to do. So I really started asking myself the question: how do you take current culture about mental health, stigmatized, scared, fear, people not accessing help? How do you use that culture and kind of turn it on itself? Instead of fighting people's human nature, work within their human nature. So what's everybody doing? They're all on social media. We've got this crazy phenomenon of reality TV shows. So I thought, well, we have this method we use at the medical school and training at the University of Toronto and elsewhere to train people on how do you interview a person with a mental health problem, your interviewing skills. So I thought, wouldn't it be fun to take regular people, you know, cocktail party advice givers who think they all know what to do, they're all great therapists, your hairdresser, your bartender, let's put them in the hot seat and create a reality TV show, and they're the contestants, and get some experts to vote on it. So we created the show. We got amazing funding from the Movember Health Charity through an innovation grant. And the idea is if we can put it out there and get it to be a popular entertainment vehicle, people might want to watch it for fun, and they don't even know that they're getting really good modeling and example of what one could do, what an illness looks like, what you could say to somebody, how to bungle the situation and say the totally wrong thing, which the next guy did actually. But that was very helpful to us. And then we get the one message out there that go for help if you think you have any of these symptoms.
What are your hopes for this thing?
I want to see this become a regular kind of show somewhere on a Netflix or on a broadcaster and a production. We just got good startup funding. We were developing it. I dabbled into the media industry, which I don't know much about. I'm learning a bit about. So I think we're onto something. We published a study that showed it worked. People are entertained, and they were much more likely to go for help or know what to say to somebody or encourage them to get to help if they watch the series. So we've got positive feedback, and we're trying to figure out where to go next.
How many episodes you got out there right now?
There's 6 in total. We had 6. We took 3 of them off, and we improved 3, and we put them back up on there. So
okay, and presumably available on YouTube.
Free on YouTube.
Think You Can Shrink.
Think You Can
That's
Shrink.
the name of the show. Okay. Tom, let me ask you about stigma, because I know for the longest time the mental health community has put out the notion that, you know, if you break your leg, you go to a doctor, you get your leg fixed, nobody thinks there's anything, you know, funny about that. Yeah. You know, if you got a problem in your head, somehow there's some stigma attached to going to a doctor and seeking the same kind of treatment for what ails you. Do you think that the efforts that have been ongoing, I guess for many years right now, you know, Bell Let's Talk and whatever else, are they working to reduce stigma associated with mental health in our province?
They are, but sort of halfway. They're great initiatives. And the evidence is something I do work in. I write in this area. They're moderate interventions that have done really well, but they're not the strongest ones. And they're really up against a big challenge, because I think we're kind of screwed in mental health.
How do you mean?
Because, you know, everything else is physical. It goes way back to the philosopher René Descartes, who kind of separated mind and body. And everything else in healthcare is physical. It's part of the body. And the one area of the immaterial, the mind, the soul, is this magical, mystical, scary place that is often associated with not being quite as real. So trying to undermine that sort of cultural, philosophical thing it's inherent in our language, our healthcare structures, in our payment structures, really everything we do. So you're really up against culture. You're not just against mental health. So the challenge is, how do we play with culture to try and pull it back into regular health? One of the main things I do with people when I see them is I just confirm for them that it's not their fault. You're not weak. It's nothing to do with you, really. It's just an illness. No big deal. That's probably the biggest thing I do to help people. Once you know what's going on, it's not that hard to start treatment. Getting them to comfort treatment and getting them to accept treatment and not blame themselves, self-stigmatize, is often the biggest thing I think I do in my work.
When you put that explanation out there to patients, do they buy it?
They like hearing it. It gives them permission. Probably have to repeat it 3-4 times, often for years. It's a toughie.
We had the former First Lady of the United States on this program several years ago, Rosalind Carter, who has spent 50 years working in mental health and trying to reduce stigma. Yeah. And I mean, she was clearly one of the pioneers in this area, but there have been many people since then as well who've tried to reduce stigma. And I'm distressed at the fact that you say, despite all these Herculean efforts in so many different quarters, we're not making as much progress as we ought to. What's holding back? Yeah, so I think the 2 types of stigma, well, structural stigma I think is the biggie. Like our legislation, our policies, our funding models, even the physical location of our hospitals. You don't have separate hospitals for every health condition, but you do for mental health. I mean, it's wonderful that we have great facilities like that, but you could also say it's a segregated cutting off of one branch of health compared to the others. That's kind of how I've started to see it. So I think getting at structural interventions, at the policies, at the rules, at the accreditation modules, to make sure we have equitable care. It's one of the pillars of quality care, and we haven't been really looking at that because it's harder to measure. So I think if we get at the structure of that, change the rules of the game, we're going to start to make real improvements in stigma.
You know, attitudes are fine, but I often challenge myself. If I had my kid go to the hospital and had a doctor who was a wonderful attitude, very kind person, but didn't do good care, would I be happy? Or do I want a guy who's really not nice, terribly stereotypical, discriminatory attitudes, but I don't know about them, and they do give great care to my kid? I take the great care, to be honest with you.
You want the latter?
Yeah, so I've kind of moved away from worrying just about attitudes. It's often a precursor to behaviors and actions about quality of care. The other thing I think really necessary for stigma reduction, and this is a bit controversial, is I think we have to give organic legitimacy to the conditions we treat.
What does that mean?
So I think we can see on an x-ray, you got pneumonia, you're coughing, we show you a picture, there's junk in one side of your lung. We're not quite there, we're just on the cusp of that in mental health. We can start to show PET scans or fancy brain images of a depressed brain, and then it lights all back up when it's treated and well. That does more than all the attitudinal discussions and things we've been up to. It's just the science and the technology just slowly catching up. We've gone through this history in every other branch of medicine. You know, a high fever, someone hallucinated and saw demons, they burned them at the stake until they understood there's this thing called bacteria. So I think we're just progressing along a historical development of understanding of yet another disease state. That's going to really change stigma. When we understand what's going on exactly, when we can test for it, when we have treatments that actually can, you know, we can help a lot of people, but when we get treatments that can maybe reverse or cure some of the conditions, that'll be the day you won't have stigma.
Well, let's suggest another way that we might reduce stigma, and that is stand-up comedy. There's a guy named Nelson Brandon. He's from British Columbia, and he's funny. Here's part of his stand-up routine. Sheldon, let's roll it.
A lot of mentally ill people like to complain that all society does is treat them as stereotypes, but we act like stereotypes ourselves. Like I hear people with mental illness bitch about how women don't want to hang out with them. And I'm thinking, you might have more success if you bathe once in a while. Of course, I don't have that problem. I just had my monthly shower a week ago. And I'll score big because tomorrow I'm getting deloused. I hear the smell of pesticides drive the babes wild. I also have social anxiety and it makes life tough. But my therapist says that I need to expose more of myself in order to overcome my fears. Yeah, the local RCMP doesn't agree.
Nelson Brandon from British Columbia. What do you think?
He's great. I like it. He can do that. He can get away with that. And I think it's wonderful because, you know, the reality is when people's mental health is disturbed, when they're really ill, what we see in the emergency room, it's often behavioral. So they may do things that are not pleasant, disturbing, scary. They may not pay attention to themselves. And so you get exactly what he was talking about. That's the reality of the condition. We can ignore that in this, you know, sometimes politically correct, especially in mental health fields, for fear of upsetting somebody. But I think we're better off if we acknowledge what we're actually dealing with and some of the challenges we have to overcome. You know, family physician providers, they're uncomfortable with people very disturbed coming in their office beside a mother with a baby there for immunizations or something. So I think we have to understand that, and I think it's a great approach. I think it's a lot of fun because we're discussing the real things that are actually going on, and sometimes we tiptoe around that because of the various highly sensitive, politically correct climate we're in sometimes.
Sure. Let's do a on the one hand, on the other hand here, okay? On the one hand, you want more men to become aware of the risks to their mental health. On the other hand, the number of mental health professionals is really not keeping pace with the demand and the need for those services. So what do we do about that mismatch?
Yeah, access is a huge problem. I'm not so sure it's the number. And, you know, Paul Kurdiak's work in Toronto did some, as much as what people are doing. Like, we have a pretty disorganized system. We haven't really tiered the care. Like, if everybody could access their family physician in a timely and easy manner, and they had the ability, the capacity, the supports to do first-line care, or if we, even before that, we had self-care modules and other health providers, we could tier it up to then get to the specialists like myself. The reality, I'm sometimes being asked to be a primary care provider. And that just gums up the system and my time to not be available to see some other people. So I think we have a highly disorganized, irrational mental health system, compartmentalized, siloed, that we're starting to address in Ontario, and there's lots of room for improvement in that.
There is something deeply ironic about your use of the word irrational in describing the mental health system in the province of Ontario. Did you mean to do that?
No, that was not at all.
That was just accidental. Okay. What do you make of, you know, there are several really far out ideas out there, everything like non-human artificial intelligence technologies that are presumably at some point meant to replace you, the actual human psychiatrist. Any bang for your buck in any of this stuff?
Yeah, there probably is a bit. Technology is a good enabler, but it's not going to replace me. It may change what I do. It may take away some of the more mundane things that I'm not really necessary for. But really, you know, it's pretty interesting what's happening in terms of delivery of therapies with the apps and sort of the telemedicine video stuff. But they're getting into some really interesting stuff where they're actually clustering language in your sentences to see if the use of certain words or the way you say them, how frequently, is indicative of something going on in the brain, because we manifest some of our brain function through our language and our speech. So that kind of stuff could be really interesting diagnostically. Technology will be an enabler. It will change the game. There's a lot of people investing money, some of whom I'm not, but people I know in all the startups. So it's pretty exciting. I think the field is ready for disruption the way we had it in other industries.
At what point do you think it will be ready to make the kind of impact you see coming?
In terms of delivery, I'd say we're getting close, like 5 years. In terms of big scientific advances, that I don't know. We've been saying that all the time, but I'm still hopeful, but wouldn't put money on that.
Gotcha. We are going to invite Wayne Hartrick back into the studio so the two of you can be here together and we'll sort of sum it all up and put a bow on it. But before we do that, we want to show some tape of another comedian. This guy is Big Daddy Taz. He is from Winnipeg. We want to show a little snippet of his take on women and men and their attitudes towards mental illness. And I guess we should just put this advisory out there for those of you watching. There's a little blue language in this clip, so if the kids are nearby, you just may want to take that into account. And with that, Sheldon, roll it.
And I'm talking mostly to the men in the audience, because women have a support group. It's called Women. I love the way you work. Look at the way she's dressed like that there. I cannot believe she's wearing a shirt 2 sizes too small, walking through the mall, her boobies just hanging out like that. I cannot believe she's just flaunting around like, oh, she's crying. Are you okay? Oh, come here. No. He said he's an asshole, that one. Yeah, let's go buy you a new shirt. Because, men, we can't even focus on our own emotions, let alone those of our friends, eh? You walk in, you want to go fishing? I'm really sad. I'll see you tomorrow.
That's Big Daddy Taz. And with that, we are delighted to welcome back into our studio Wayne Hartrick. He is the founding president of the Canadian Men's Health Foundation. And once again, joining us, Dr. Thomas Ungar, psychiatrist and chief, St. Michael's Hospital, for a few concluding thoughts on both physical and mental health for men on our program here tonight. He's being only half facetious, I guess, Wayne, this notion that women have a support group, they're called women. Because men don't really have a similar support group, do they?
You know, men don't tend to reach out, as Dr. Ungar, I'm sure, would verify. Men don't tend to reach out about emotions and things that make us appear weak and, you know, not strong. So the kinds of support men do need, support groups, but the kind of support we need is the kind of way that Dr. Ungar was talking about earlier, where we're meeting men where they are in the way in which they need to be met. A lot of that is also online and some of it in person. I mean, 2 examples I'll just throw out there. There's a website started by Dr. John Olaf out at UBC called Heads Up Guys. That's a place guys can go to in private, kind of get some information on their own mental health and use as a resource for information with videos and other things to help them along. In the face-to-face kind of men's support group, it's a very different way of approaching it. There's the beginning of a program here in Canada called Men's Sheds, patterned after a very successful program in Australia.
How are you spelling that?
Men's Sheds. These are literally like in Australia, they're actually sheds that they built, where guys come together who are maybe retired or they don't have enough to do or they're feeling depressed, and they get together and they work on projects together, woodworking projects and other things for the community, and they share, right? So they come together that way. So men need support, but maybe they need it a different way, the way we were talking about before, using design theory, like going first to the guys, finding out how best to get to them, and then delivering it in a way that they can share.
Is it really reasonable to expect men to act more like women on this issue?
Yeah, so I think that's a mistake we've been making. So I think the smart way to think about it is how do they not have to be sisterly, but to be male about how they do it. You know, men get a lot of their support networks, not so much from, quote, the women only, is in their family and in their workplaces. So, you know, times of retirement, times of divorce, these are huge disruptions and often lead to isolation. So unless you happen to play hockey or get together with some friends socially, it's really hard for men to maintain the social connections. And really, social connectedness is one of the best protectors of mental health.
Are millennial young men any better at this than the next generation up or the boomers or beyond?
Well, I don't know. All I can tell you is my kids are constantly on their phones, and I do the typical thing and yell, try to take it away, and it goes around in circles.
Your kids are teenagers, right?
I have 22, 20, and 16. So
okay,
I've been watching it for many years.
You've seen this movie before. Wayne, how about you on that?
Well, you see, this is interesting. I've certainly not a psychiatrist or delved into your field, but I have read some interesting theory that some psychologists have come up with called the boys' code. And this is this idea that when we're young, coming into puberty, that there's this unwritten, unspoken code that gets kind of imprinted on us about you need to be a part of the group. You need to be kind of strong, tease or be teased. And that a lot of these things kind of become factors in how we behave later in life. And I kind of expect when I look at, kids in high school and stuff, that a lot of those same things are going on today. And that you're getting information out there, like we're talking about, that you can open up and you can talk to guys, and it actually is a good thing to do. And guys respond well once you have that safe environment to talk in.
We're going to share a quote here that in some quarters will seem a little politically incorrect, but there is a method to our madness here. Let's put this up, shall we, Sheldon? And I shall read it aloud. Not only does avoiding the doctor prevent health maintenance, it also allows for bad behavior. It's all about accountability. As a result of not being forced to own up to obesity, smoking, and excessive alcohol consumption, men develop the diseases associated with these unhealthy lifestyles: hypertension, diabetes, even cancer. These are all silent killers, many of which could have been prevented or treated with routine health maintenance. A little nagging, if you will. Maybe it's not marital bliss that allows married men greater longevity than their single counterparts, but instead the accountability provided from a wife or significant other who cares. Okay, who's going to take that on? Married men live longer because they get nagged more and therefore take better care of themselves. Okay, I see you both.
As a married man, I'm going to pass.
After you, Alphonse.
No, this is dangerous territory for you on television.
Okay, Wayne, go ahead.
Say, we sent a researcher to talk to men across Canada using a form of research called morphological, which looks at some of the psychological kind of tensions that make us make decisions in our daily lives, like the tension between risk and safety, for example. And through that, he came back with an interesting theory that there's 6 different paradigms or views that men might look at health, either through their life or at different times. Right? And one of them is the group of men who kind of rely on being nudged along by others to be more proactive about their health. So there is maybe some evidence there that would support that. I suppose the other thing is that, we hear a lot from men that, once they retire, especially if for any reason that, they're divorced or their spouse isn't alive, that they fall quite quickly into isolation, which you talk about as, the loss of socialization, which can lead to very, very poor health outcomes after that. So I think these are, there are factors in there.
So when your wife tells you to go walk the dog, actually she's just trying to help you be healthier.
That's a good idea. I think what's also in there is I think we've had a bit of a decline in the type of primary family physician care that we used to have. I mean, I think going to the physician when I was younger, I actually had a brief career as a family doctor before I went back to do psychiatry. That was a long-term relationship. You weren't just accountable. You trusted someone. There was a safe place. They knew you. And they kind of felt some oversight responsibility as your medical home. And it was more like a strong, positive adult figure. I won't say male figure, it's a female figure. And I think,
authority figure.
Authority figure. And so there's accountability. You can have equitable care. It doesn't mean you're still not accountable for your care. So I think, now there's a real shift in the way care is delivered, the medical home, where you go for that. So I know my kids probably don't have that type of relationship over the years with the health provider that I might have had growing up.
And therefore,
you might not think about having to check in with that person. We don't even do the annual physical the way we used to growing up. So there may be just a change, not so much in the science of it, but in the relationship that you used to have with that one accountable person you were accountable to.
I want to Wayne. Let's put some numbers out here. This is actually shocking. Economic consequences. You probably know this guy, Hans Kruger from University of British Columbia, health economist there. He calculated that if just 1% of middle-aged Canadian men change their lifestyle each year between, say, now and 2036, which is not that far into the future, frankly, quit smoking, reduce your alcohol intake, get more active, get your weight down, As an economy, the Canadian economy would essentially find $51 billion.
Yes.
And think what you could do with that.
Yes.
So the next question becomes, is this achievable?
I think change is achievable. We're seeing that just through the engagement we do online. Our purpose is to innovate the ways in which we go out and engage men, particularly by finding them online. And when they're engaged with us and we survey them, we see that they're making changes in their health. So, this is all about small steps for guys,
yep,
and then small steps of improvement for the system. Hans Kruger, who you referred to, did a study for us of the cost to the overall healthcare system of men not paying attention to nutrition, activity, and sleep just over the course of a year, $36 billion. But men need to be, rather than being lectured at, we hear a lot when we talk to them, they want to be motivated, not lectured at. So we took another crunch of the data, and we took a look at what was the cost to the individual guy if he smoked 5 cigarettes a day, had a couple of drinks, and had to declare to his life insurance that he was a part-time smoker, et cetera. And you took that money and you put it into a mutual fund over a period of time. Almost every guy who was partly unhealthy could be a multimillionaire by the time they were 40 or 50 years old. So we try and take this information and make it into a more motivational. But nonetheless, the impacts are big. Small changes make big impacts over time, whether it's to the individual or to the system.
It's interesting that $51 billion, that's enough to run the entire healthcare system in the province of Ontario for a year. Yeah. It's an astonishing amount of money. Let's give you the last word on this, Tom. If you wanted to leave people with one piece of advice today to improve their mental health, what would it be?
Stay connected and go get help when you need it.
Stay connected.
Socially connected.
Well, see, I want to be clear. I understand
or
that.
Or get connected if you're not.
Because today, if you talk to people about being connected, they think you mean on Facebook.
So thank you for clarifying. Stay socially connected or get socially connected, which could be partly enabled by online, but even better if it's in person.
Person-to-person contact, key.
Having social connections, community, finding them at your community center, your house of worship, whatever it is for you, can be really preventative and really helps a lot. And if it's not going well, just get help. Go to your family doctor, go to emergency room, call a helpline. Don't keep it to yourself, get help.
Good stuff. Gentlemen, I can't thank you enough for spending so much time with us here on TVO tonight. This was truly illuminating. Wayne Hartrick is the president of the Canadian Men's Health Foundation. He came all the way from British Columbia to be with us tonight. Thanks so much for that. And Dr. Thomas Ungar is the psychiatrist in chief from St. Michael's Hospital, and he's come at least 5 subway stops to be with us tonight. Thanks so much, gents. Appreciate it.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Help TVO create a better world through the power of learning. Visit TVO.org and make a tax-deductible donation today.